to observe a moment of resistance to mourn the lives of the people in Gaza that are still experiencing more than 2 years of genocide. Can we have a moment of resistance for the 168 children that were killed in a single incident in southern Iran? Can we have a moment of resistance for the people of Sudan? Can we have a moment of resistance for the people of Congo? And can we have a moment of resistance for all oppressed and occupied peoples of the world? Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to the Dennis Brutus Institutional Public Lecture at the South End Museum. This is a historical moment. My name is Tasneem Fredericks. I am a conveyancer, that's an attorney who does property law. So the land is an issue that is very close to me, and I'm very honored that I serve on the South End Museum Trust. So I would like to greet everyone here tonight and welcome the guests who are here in person. Thank you for your attendance and your time and your attention. I know that we are live streaming the event via the YouTube channel, so to all the participants that are watching, welcome to you as well. And then we'd like to welcome, our esteemed and distinguished guests, Dr. Kumi Naidu, who will be speaking to us this evening, as well as Ms. Tandokazi Kuma Moyo from the Technology Innovation Agency. We greet the leadership of the Nelson Mandela University that are with us tonight, and for those particularly at the university who carry this big name that arrange and organize lectures of this magnitude. So welcome to all of you, welcome to the activists in the room, welcome to the students, welcome to the learners, welcome to the community, the South End community, the South End volunteers, I see them, the trustees, and really just all of us who are here to make the world a better place. So before I get into the program, I just want to make a few announcements. Just to remind everyone, including myself, to turn your phone down to silent or put it on airplane mode. You can take a vacay for 2 hours. Nothing is that urgent. The cat can wait for its food. Just switch your phone off. And then also, the toilets are to my left. That would be your right. The program, I'm sure everyone has a program, and you'll see it's not a very hectic program. It sets out everything there. Tonight we're going to have a Q&A discussion after the main speaker and the respondent has had an opportunity, and then we'll do a vote of thanks, and there will be some beverages and refreshments for everyone to enjoy at the end. I just want to talk about, the fact that climate disasters are worsening and armed conflicts are raging. And at this moment in time, we hear this notion of World War III, and I don't think it's even to be taken lightly anymore. And what I want to say, I say all of this to say it's hard to keep believing that a better world is possible. But you have to believe, and this is called hope, I'm told. And what do we need hope for? We need hope for people, we need hope for the planet, and we need hope for peace. So I found a poem by Dennis Brutus, aptly named Hopes for a Better World. And he wrote this poem on a trip from Caracas, Venezuela, imagine Venezuela today, they don't have a president, to Durban, South Africa. And this poem, at the beginning of the poem, Brutus states, there are lively political struggles in our time, particularly in Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia. And what this poem is really about is an outlook one has on life. The wish for simple joys, the hope for something good. It highlights simple needs, the joys that come from a smile, the appreciation of frankness, openness, and friendliness. So it's a lighter side of Dennis Brutus because we all know that we're honoring him here tonight, and we honor him in this lecture every year to really just remember him and memorialize the legacy that he had as a poet and anti-apartheid activist. So I just want to say that these lectures are organized by the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy, At the Nelson Mandela University, it serves as a platform to discuss social justice, human rights, political liberation, which are all themes that were central to Dennis Brutus's life. I'm not going to get into the introduction of Dr. Kumi Naidoo. I'm also not going to get into the introduction of Ms. Thandokazi Kuma Moyo, the beautiful Ms. Thandokazi with your beautiful traditional outfit. It's so stunning. Because the person that's going to do that, and who insisted that I have a very long introduction for him, is Professor Andre Keet. So the short introduction to Professor Keet is simply that he holds the research chair for critical studies in higher education transformation, and he is the deputy vice chancellor for engagement and transformation. So that in a nutshell is who Professor Andre Keet is, but that's the boring part. What I want to say, the Professor Andre Keet that I want to introduce everyone to, is I want to tell a story. So I met Professor Keet properly for the first time opposite the Green Acres taxi rank. We were organizing a rally in solidarity with Palestine and to march against the genocide of Gaza. So the way I would like to introduce him is the people's professor, Professor Andre Keet.
Thanks so much for that, Tasneem. And of course, I stand here on behalf of Professor Sibongile Mutwa, who always, when she has the time, open and welcome these lectures for us. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. But it is my immense pleasure, and it looks beautiful and amazing from up here, to welcome you all to this year's Dennis Brutus Lecture, an important event in our university's IPL series. This lecture is one of the ways in which we seek to deepen our academic identity, especially in the context of critical Mandela studies, in which we want to advance our strategic commitments and, of course, build enduring partnerships and relationalities across our different communities. So allow me first to acknowledge our program director, Tasneem Fredericks. Always great to work with Tasneem on so many different projects here in our city. She's a program director, but also a trustee, as she has introduced herself. And then, of course, Dr. Kumi Naidoo, our keynote speaker, a renowned human rights and climate justice activist. There will be another introduction to that as well. Ms. Thandokazi Kuma Moyo from the TIA, and of course, the respondent this evening. So we're really looking forward to a very, very fruitful and productive engagement. Advocate Louisa Zondo, a good friend, a remarkable South African, and of course also a social justice activist. Mr. Ben Stevenson, a colleague of the keynote speaker. You know how this works, nah? Is that I don't think up these names. These are sent to me as I prepare my introductory remarks. Mr. Michael Berry and Mr. Paul Geswind, trustees of this amazing museum. It's almost like a gem, here in the middle of our city. And Mr. Geswind also serves as the director of our alumni office. Ms. Rose de Donker, principal of Patterson High School. Masutu Madlovu, acclaiming performing artist. Masakele Ndabeni, the CEO of Green Spaces. Mr. Orik Swartboy and Ms. Otila Swartboy. Jenny Dupré, the senior manager in our research chair. Alan Zinn, who manages all our IPLs for us. Then we have colleagues, and in fact, I tease them because they didn't RSVP, meaning that they're not on the list. But as I saw them come in, I thought, okay, make these notes and so on. But I wanted to say I'm not going to recognize you. But it's going to be strange because I can see them, so allow me. So we have colleagues, Dr. Jacobs here and his team from Comms and Marketing. I've got my colleague, Muki Moheng here as a DVC Learning and Teaching. Nandi is here. I see Jackie is here. I say Pamela is here from the Deanery. I also the Dean of Science is also here. And then, of course, family and friends from across the board. The entire community, including the university community, the broader community as well. You are all welcome. I would like to to just make a particular kind of exception here, and that is to welcome the educators and learners from Patterson High School, of course, and of course, as well as the principal once again, and then, of course, the staff of the South End Museum and all other guests who are joining us online and who are present here as well. Now, your presence on so many fronts affirms the shared purpose that underpins this lecture series against the backdrop of the challenges sketched by Tasneem as well. So Dennis Brutus is from Patterson High School. That was his alma mater. And of course, the participation of the school reminds us on so many fronts, both metaphorically and literally, that this lecture series is not only about honoring this remarkable figure, but also inspiring new generations who literally walk into his footsteps. It is also great to welcome back Louisa and Kumi into our space, where we demonstrate the deep partnership between this amazing museum and the university. This museum has been so open and generous in its engagement with the university, regarding itself as an extension of the mandate of the university, and we are literally free to engage as if the museum and the university belong to one another, as it should be, of a university that has our particular strategic orientation. So we honor this evening Dennis Brutus, a son from the Eastern Cape, born, of course I laughed at this, born in Salisbury, southern Rhodesia, today Harare, Zimbabwe, but to South African parents. So his life story is a complex mosaic. He was of indigenous, Khoi, Dutch, French, English, German, and Malay ancestry, and was later classified as colored under the apartheid racial codes, of course. So this intricate, layered inheritance shaped his literary and poetic sensibilities and fueled his lifelong resistance to injustice. So there is a deep resonance between his life and the values we seek to embody as an institution, an African university, in such a simple, profound way in the service of society, located in a region and a world grappling with the intersecting crises of inequality, ecological breakdown, and democratic and human rights erosions. So Brutus' example invites us to inhabit complexity rather than free from it, and of course, to respond to crisis with ethical imagination, as his works attest to. Of course, with his impeccable scholarly and structural credentials, he refused the trappings of power and predatory accumulation, something that is very rare in our world today. So there can be little doubt that if he were alive today, he would have been disappointed by many aspects of South African society, almost 3 decades, more than 3 decades into our democracy, and he would have been disturbed by the turn of events on the global stage, which has been actually in the making for decades. But yet I suspect that he would search, as the poem indicates, stubbornly for glimmers of hope, moments of solidarity, resistance, and care that suggest, Tasneem, that another world is still possible. So in 2009, our university conferred an honorary doctorate of literature, so thanks to the humanities faculty, on Dennis Brutus in recognition of his anti-apartheid activism, his struggle for a just society, and his standing as a preeminent South African poet. It is therefore entirely fitting that biennially we gather in his name to engage pressing social questions and to draw on his writings and ideas. It is equally fitting, Becky, and I need to acknowledge you and your team as well, that this lecture is hosted by CANRAD, given Brutus's unwavering battle against racism, of course, and his central role in the South African Non-Racial Olympic Committee, and of course his use of sports as a terrain of struggle against apartheid. And there are many others here who I see who was in that same particular element of the anti-apartheid movement. In this way, the lecture continues its legacy of connecting cultural, political, and ethical struggles across different domains of life. So thanks, Candrad, and let us give them a warm round of applause for pulling this together. But the world is planetary. And this lecture also takes place against the backdrop of Human Rights Month, with us, of course, observing 21st March as Human Rights Day, and as well as observing the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, also on the 21st of March. And a few days ago, on the 8th of March, it was also International Women's Day, just to connect and locate the lecture against that backdrop. So we are privileged to listen tonight to our keynote speaker, Kumi, and of course his respondent, Ms. Kazi, followed by what I'm sure will be a rich and challenging discussions. The insights will help us think with Brutus about the urgencies of our time, especially the intertwined crisis that I referred to earlier. So with these words, and in the spirit of Denis Brutus's enduring commitment to justice, imagination, and courage, I would like to say once more, you are all most welcome. May this evening lecture open up new questions, fresh connections, and a new resolve for the work that lies ahead. Many, many thanks for joining us.
Thanks to everyone, and may I please remind you, you are at the Denis Brutus public lecture titled Environmental Degradation and its Socio-Economic Impact, Causes and Possible Solutions. I'm so excited because there is a climate activist and a scientist in the room, so we're looking for innovation that's going to solve this. And we hope that we have all the role players from government, community, university, academia, that, you know, we're going to have what, I know Latin isn't spoken anymore, Michael, but quo vadis, which means where to from here. So we look forward to the end, and we have the end in mind as we move forward this evening. So I'd like to welcome my favorite trustee, because there aren't, I think Mike Tumko is here, I was going to say, because there are no other trustees here for tonight. Michael Barry from the South End Museum to give us a message of support. Let's give him a warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Tasneem. Just a reminder, Tasneem is actually our youngest trustee. Unfortunately, our average age is rising. She managed to bring down the average, so, but it's rising very dangerously. We're down to 9 trustees now. I'm glad Mike is here as well, Mike Timko at the back, and then our youngest trustee, I think that's the 3, and then we've got volunteers here as well. Prof, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you everybody for coming to our humble museum. I'm not being facetious, but it's a museum that we love and that we keep going throughout. It's now 26 years we've been open. And so we look for funding, and we managed to survive. Operational budget of over R1 million a year, and it's not easy, but we are managing. So thank you very much for using the space. This is exactly what we wanted to be used for. You know, cultural, and it's dialogue and so forth. So on behalf of the South End Museum, let me read what I wrote here instead of wandering off like President Trump. On behalf of the South End Museum, we'd like to warmly welcome Dr. Kumi Naidu and Ms. Kazi, Ngoma Moya, and to express our sincere appreciation for their presence and participation in today's important dialogue. The South End Museum is honored to host and support conversations that engage with the issues of justice, human dignity, and social transformation. As a community museum, our work is rooted in preserving the history of South End, a vibrant multicultural community whose residents were forcibly removed during the 1960s and 1970s under apartheid. We weren't the only one in the country, it was all over the country. This is just symbolic of what happened. The back there, if you have a chance to look, you'll see the names of areas that were affected by this group areas and displacement before the group areas as well. We always forget about that history. That is just in this Port Elizabeth area. Through our exhibitions, archives, and educational programs, we strive to ensure that these histories are remembered and that they continue to inform the present and inspire a more just future. It is therefore especially meaningful for us to welcome Dr. Naidu, whose lifelong commitment to human rights, environmental justice, and civic activism has inspired many across the world. We are equally grateful to Ms. Moyo for joining us as a respondent and for contributing her voice and perspective to this conversation. We look forward to the reflections and insights that will be shared today, this evening, and we thank our speakers for helping to create a space where dialogue, learning, and critical engagement can take place. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the evening here.
Thanks so much. Michael Barry was a teacher at St. Thomas where I attended high school from 1990 to 1995. So I'm young, but I'm not that young. So thank you so much for those warm words. And really, it's historical for us to host these events, and we're very grateful for the partnership with the Nelson Mandela University. The next message of support, and perhaps one of the most important ones, is from Ms. Rose Dodonka. I was at an event with, at the Boardwalk. I was with Gift of the Givers, and she got Best Principal in the World Award, I kid you not. So let us really warm our hands in applause to Ms. Rose Dodonka from the principal, Patterson High School.
Good evening, everybody. It's really not in the world. Madam Program Director, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Distinguished guest and our keynote speaker and all present here, thank you so much. I was just telling the gentleman at the back how profoundly proud I am to be standing here as the principal of Patterson High School. You know, you only hear about Dennis Brutus because I spoke to my mother last night and she said Dennis Brutus was her English teacher. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my mother's 87 years old. So you can imagine. But please allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to CANRAD, you know, for allowing me to be here tonight and to say a message of support. And thank you also to CANRAD for keeping the memory of Dennis Brutus alive with this annual lecture. It's so very important. And I think we all know that long before he was an international icon of the anti-apartheid movement and a world-renowned poet, Dennis Brutus was a teacher at Patterson High School. Hence, I'm so proud to stand here. To us, he's not just a figure, you know, in a history book. He's a permanent part of our school's DNA. Last year, we celebrated our centenary, and Mr. Barry will tell you I've made so many presentations last year, and every time I would brag about our illustrious alumnus, Professor Dennis Brutus. So it's really such an honor for me to be standing here tonight. You know, you find as principal when you're walking through the corridors of Patterson High and you are reminded that these are the corridors that Dennis Brutus walked through. Only then do you feel that immense pressure. So as we gather to honor a man who transformed stubborn hope, I'm sure you know that is one of his most iconic poems, into a global movement, I would like to bring all of you a warm message of support and solidarity from the staff, the school governing body, and most importantly, the learners of Patterson High School. As I mentioned, Professor Dennis Brutus was also the editor of the Pattersonian Spectator at the time. He was the teacher who once stood at our chalkboards, refusing to let the dust and the grit of a fractured system dim the brilliance of his pupils at the time. Dennis Brutus's poem, Stubborn Hope, serves today as a powerful metaphor for resilience in the face of systemic decay. In Stubborn Hope, Brutus describes a hope that persists even when the conditions for growth are hostile. We can draw a direct parallel between the environmental degradation of a community and the socio-economic barriers that our learners face today. And while the poem, ladies and gentlemen, was written, I feel, during the height of the apartheid struggle, it also provides for us a perfect analogy for the relationship between a degraded environment and the potential of the learners at a school like Patterson High School. As we navigate the complexities of the climate change and the economic hardship, we feel we must channel that Pattersonian stubbornness. We must find solutions that are inclusive, sustainable, and revolutionary. This year, as Patterson High navigates our 101st year, Dennis Brutus's life remains the ultimate blueprint for our back to basics philosophy, proving that academic discipline and commitment to social justice are two sides of the same coin. At Patterson, we are committed to carrying Brutus's torch into this new frontier. I'm proud to say, whether it is through our focus on science, technology, or coding and robotics, our learners, Dr. Naidu, are testing soil using advanced coding and robotics at Patterson High School in the George Botha lab. I'm proud to say. Thank you. And so, keeping in mind the theme, at Patterson High, we continue to find possible solutions through community projects that reclaim our local environment. And in so doing, we strive to honor the name of Dennis Brutus. We are cognizant that we must teach our learners that protecting our environment is the ultimate act of self-love and community preservation. We at Patterson High School remain committed to Brutus's vision of a non-racial, democratic, and sustainable future. We aren't just teaching history. We are trying to mold the next generation of troublemakers for justice, young men and women who will look at a polluted river or a cleared forest and see it as an affront to human rights. May this lecture tonight inspire us all to be as courageous in our defense of the earth as Dennis Brutus was in defense of freedom. On behalf of the learners, on behalf of the students, on behalf of the alumni of Patterson High School, we stand in full support of this initiative. We honor the man who taught in our classrooms by continuing the work that he started, the work of making a more beautiful and more just world for all. I thank you.
Thank you, Rose Dodonka, principal at Patterson, and really illustrious alumni. I mean, we've got George Botha, who was also a teacher, so definitely, without a doubt, the best principal in the world. Thank you. So we get to the main event of this evening. Well, not yet. We have a performance. Sorry, guys. We have a performance by Mandlovu. And if I can have Ma Ndlovu on the stage to give us just that rendition. Thank you very much.
ababantu, ababantu, ababantu. Abayikholelwa tule nkolo yabo. Ukuba bebeyikholelwa lenkolo yabo ababayi basapho nembezi khawusibuze nawe mamsapho nembezi unembezi 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 masapho uxolo masapho nembezi unembezi unembezi hey ta nyamaza kom kelila ta nyamaza kom kilaman ta nyamaza. And so we survive. And so we survive severance, deprivation and loss. And so we survive. Kuna namhlanje asangixaka mna amazwi nosiba likatata uDennis Brutus because it doesn't make sense to me. It hasn't yet dawned on me on how a man who's day in and day out from dawn until another night, incarcerated in the big cold walls of Robben Island, clouded and bombarded by sirens, knuckles and boots. His life was sirens and knuckles and boots. That was his life. But as a weapon of resistance and resilience and love for his people, he would take out poetry and fire, gunshots into an African child as though he aimed to liberate an African child. He would take poetry and shot gunshots to us as though he was giving us a timeless strategy that no longer do we fight with sticks and stones, but with a pen and a paper. Dennis Brutus. Dennis. Sleep well, my love. Sleep well, my land. Ababantu, 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 abayikholelwe tule nkolo yabo, abayikholelwe tu izikhalo ezingaka kubantu abamnyama, kubantu abamnyama, kubantu abamnyama. Nzabacela ngedolo, nzabacela kubiko, nzabacela kusobukwe, nzabacela kumatekisela, nzabacela kumanyaka amaqaqeni, bacele nakuyo Dennis Brutus nzaba cela Thixo wokhokho bethu, Thixo wokhokho bethu. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Oh, guys. Okay, I'm taking off the glasses. Thank you so much. We were given 10 minutes, so we're just going to do our last rendition and then we're done. Yeah. I'm sure you guys are happy with that, hey? Okay. You're okay. Standing ovation. Okay, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I would like to thank Conrad and the university for always deeming my work fit to such conversations. It's so beautiful, man, more particularly when we get a chance to celebrate people that fought for us, because these things happened in real time. It's not really black and white, just like we read our history. It's real time. People lived these lives. So to get here and be like, yo, Nkosi yam, it's such an honor to celebrate such amazing people that fought for us as African people. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Soto Mandlovu, and I do decolonized art. Thank you. And yes, I'm not alone. I'm with my brother, Umbulelo Nomfemelo, on percussions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, I have goosebumps. Does everyone have goosebumps? I really feel like there was an invocation of the spirit of Nelson Mandela, the spirit of Dennis Brutus, the spirit of George Botha, and, everyone that came before. So thank you so much for giving of yourself. Your decolonized art means a lot. I think this is one great act being followed by another great act. So I have the honor and privilege to introduce our next item on the program, and that's the introduction of the guest speaker, Dr. Kumi Naidu, and he is accompanied by his beautiful wife, Louise. No stranger to the museum. They were here last time. In fact, I attended when you had launched your book, Letters to My Mother. So that was really special. And I think, it's about sharing of yourself and just allowing that vulnerability and allowing us into your lives and inviting us. So we are grateful that you are here today. Just a little bit about the guest speaker, and I took this off your own website, kuminaidu.net, for all of those who want to look up and see there is a podcast. I was quite astonished. So if you want to like and follow Dr. Kumi Naidoo, he's on all the social platforms, I mean, more than I am. So he calls himself activist human being, good troublemaker. Reminds me of when people say the good blacks, you know, and when you troublesome black. So Kumi Naidoo is a South African human rights and environmental justice activist, currently the president of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. Sorry. He's the former Secretary General of Amnesty International for 2018 to 2019. He's also the first person from the Global South to lead Greenpeace International 2009 to 2015. He is an advisor for the Community Arts Network. He serves as a global ambassador for Africans Rising for Justice, Peace, and Dignity. His family started the Ricky Rick Foundation for the promotion of artivism. Guys, artivism, not activism, artivism, to build on the positive legacies left by popular South African rapper Ricardo Ricky Rick Mercado through his music and life's work. Through this foundation, he co-founded the global Energizing Artivism Initiative. Kumi is also the author of award-winning Letters to My Mother, The Makings of a Troublemaker, and the host of the podcast Power, People, and the Planet. Let's welcome Dr. Kumi Naidoo, everyone.
Thank you so very much for that incredibly kind introduction. Good evening, distinguished guests, comrades, colleagues, and friends. Tasneem, there is another way that you could have introduced me. You could have said, this guy has been in the trenches for more than 45 years, fighting for democracy, human rights, sustainability, and actually has very little to show for it, given the state of the world that we are in today. And I want to start there by saying that this moment of history that we find ourselves in is one that calls for brutal honesty. And I want to bring into the conversation one of the greatest anti-colonial leaders in this continent ever produced, Amilcar Cabral from Guinea-Bissau, when he said, "Tell no lies and claim no easy victories." So we must be honest that where we are is almost none of us imagined where we would be today. But I also want to start by saying that this province, I want to pay a tribute to the Eastern Cape. It taught me many things about struggle. I was at the Craddock 4 funeral as a young person when we buried Matthew Goniwe and other comrades. But I also learned some light things about the Eastern Cape as well, funny things. Like I was once asked to moderate a complicated meeting of 19 education departments in the Eastern Cape as part of the unification process. And Reverend Stofile was there and so on, and I was moderating this very controversial thing, and a woman put up her hand and spoke in a really great African-American accent. So during the break, I say to my colleagues, is that sister married to somebody from this region? And then he says to me, no, she's what we here call a Tranco-American. I said, what's a Tranco-American? He said, somebody from Transkei that went on a 6-month exchange program and came back with an African-American accent. But on a more serious note, I want to start by paying tribute to the leadership of the university that every university in the country is jealous of, to the Nelson Mandela University. To the leadership, to the staff, and to the students, and to the administrators, you carry a major legacy. And I should say that I was honored to receive my first honorary doctorate from what was then known as NMMU. I'm glad it lost one of its M's along the way. But I want to also pay tribute to this amazing museum. And I want to, in the spirit, Louisa and I were here to launch Letters to My Mother, The Making of the Troublemaker. And in the context of the title of that book, I want to say the first challenging thing to the leadership of the city and to this leadership of the province. It is pathetic that you do not put a cent into supporting this great institution that makes sure we do not forget the history of struggle that we come from. And I appeal to them, if you really wanted to, you could be supporting museums and other arts and cultural institutions much more than you're doing, because God knows a lot of the money is disappearing into a lot of powerful people's pockets, and it's been going on for 30 years, and we've had it now, and we say enough is enough and no more. You can clap for that if you want. It is a profound honor to deliver the Dennis Brutus Memorial Lecture. Tonight we gather not to remember just a poet, an academic, an activist, but to carry on his unfinished struggle. I must confess to being somewhat nervous for multiple reasons tonight. The main reason is best captured in this story. Speaking to a group of foundations in the United States a couple years ago, at the end of my speech, somebody put up their hand and said, "Dr. Naidu, have you heard of Martin Luther King?" I said, "Yes, he inspired many people in our struggle here in South Africa." Then she asked me, "Do you know what his most famous speech was called?" She was upset with my speech. I think it was a trick question. I very gently said, "I have a dream." And she shouted back, "Yes, it was I have a dream. When I hear you speak, it sounds like you have a bloody nightmare. The oceans are rising, the forests are disappearing, the cities are flooding, fascism is on the rise." Therein, dear brothers and sisters, lies the challenge of the moment we find ourselves in. How can we speak truth to power and not sanitize the fact that humanity is in a deep and spiraling crisis? But how can we do that in a way that does not immobilize, depress, and make people feel that their voice, their agency, and their participation does not matter? Indeed, if ever participation of ordinary people in trying to get us to move away from the mad trajectory that powerful political leaders, especially in the rich countries of the world, are taking us, now is the voice of ordinary people standing up. Dennis, living under the apartheid nightmare, held steadfast to a dream of freedom. Dennis was imprisoned in 1963 after the publication of his first anthology of poetry, Sirens, Knuckles, and Boots. After his exile to the United States in 1965, by the way, that was the year I was born, 1965. I'm a lighty compared to him. He played a variety of roles on top of his continued writing. Dennis helped spear the movement of African literature curricula within higher education across the world, including, by the way, in Africa. He's perhaps best known as a key leader of the campaign to ban South Africa from the Olympic Games. And he was one of the people who made the slogan, "No normal sport in an abnormal society," a household slogan. It was one of the first slogans as a teenager I heard. In 1994, Dennis returned to South Africa. Until his passing in 2009, he campaigned tirelessly for economic justice, what he saw as the path to truly realize our anti-apartheid struggles for freedom's dreams. It's ironic that we titled this lecture Environmental Degradation and its Socio-Economic Impact, Causes and Solutions, because if Dennis could speak now, you'd say that's the most unpoetic title for a lecture that you could come up with. How we communicate about climate change and the struggles that we face is critically important. In the spirit of the topic for tonight, I will focus on two things. The first part will talk about addressing the root cause of the climate crisis, which is getting off our addiction and dependency on fossil fuels. And the second part focuses on the need for us to communicate like human beings, to fellow human beings. And to those of us who have been activists for a long time, and those of you who are from NGOs and other movements, we must be honest with ourselves that far too often we are using a language that 90% of our people don't understand. We are more concerned about whether we sound intelligent to policymakers, to funders, and so on, and far too often we have left people behind. So, we know that the cause of climate crisis, 86% of what drives the climate crisis is oil, coal, and gas. This has been known for years and years, decades. In fact, the first scientists to know about the danger of fossil fuels were the ones that worked for the oil companies. So for decades, they've been increasing the levels of the oil platforms in the sea to take into account sea level rise and so on, but they were spending billions, and they're still continuing to spend billions contaminating the public discourse and spread disinformation. I have sat in negotiating rooms where the science was crystal clear, the data was irrefutable, the urgency was undeniable, and yet progress stalled. Not because we lacked information or technocratic expertise, not because the science of climate change was unclear, because something else was operating in those rooms. Power, money, history, identity, fear, and most importantly, denial. So I'm going to do a quick pop quiz now, and I'm going to ask you a simple question. Where do you think, as the human family globally, right? Don't answer it specifically with regard to South Africa. Where do you think we are in terms of addressing the climate crisis? I'm going to give you three options. Option one, don't look at the screen too much. Option one, no reason to panic. Our political and business leaders will get their act together and prevent the worst. Option two, we are in a deep crisis and the window of opportunity is fast closing, but it's still within human capability, ingenuity, and creativity that we can broaden that window and reverse the suicidal trajectory that we're on. And option three is, if I can use in my very bad Afrikaans, rather than saying what's on the screen, that it's too late. Option three, you can say, ons is deep, deep, deep in the kak. Right? So option one, no reason to panic. Option two, every reason to panic, but we can turn things around. Option three, it's too late. Okay, those of you think it's option one, raise your hands. Okay, nobody thinks we can trust our governments and business. Option two, interesting. Option three, okay. So, I can tell you this is the result we pretty much get in any country you run the spoil today. But what I say to young people, even if you've come to the conclusion that it might be too late, we are not going to let those that brought us to this catastrophic moment to get away without accountability and without them being named. But let me say to you with optimism that there are three words that the science uses. We need to avert catastrophic, runaway, irreversible climate change. We are in the early stages of catastrophe. You can ask any farmer anywhere in Africa and South Africa. They will tell you the rains are coming when it shouldn't. They're not coming, when they should, and they are coming in volumes that washes away everything. Now, there's some good news, right? I can see some young people in the audience getting anxious, so I just want to tell you there's some good news. And the good news is the planet does not need saving. The planet is just fine. Why do I say this? If we continue on this path that we are on, we continue to warm up the planet, we continue to destroy our water resources, we continue to destroy our soil resources, what will happen? We won't be able to grow food. So the end result is, we will be gone, the planet will still be here. And the good news is, once we become extinct as a species, the oceans will recover, the forests will grow up, and so on. So don't worry about the planet. Understand that the struggle to avert catastrophic climate change is nothing more and nothing less than protecting our children and their children's future. And in every culture, in every religion, in every race, we all value our children and their children as precious, precious assets. And it's about time those in my generation stand up and say, we have failed our children by not acting with the urgency that the situation calls for. All the way back in 2008, at the Copenhagen Climate Summit, we were calling for a FAB deal. Not a fabulous deal, but a fair, ambitious, and binding deal. But what we get every year since then, we get a FLAB outcome, F-L-A-B. I'm just checking the age group here before I complete the sentence. Okay, everybody is above 21, right? Mostly. Okay, but we get a FLAB deal. I think you all can take it, those young people in the back. What we get is full of loopholes and bullshit, right? And we have to begin to question whether, in fact, we are playing a game that is meaningless and not delivering what humanity actually needs. If you've ever been to a UN climate summit, you'll find that the biggest delegation to the UN summit is not the United States, he's not Britain, it's not Europe. Guess who it is? It is the lobbyists of the fossil fuel industry. For every 50 normal delegates from government, business, and civil society, for every 50 delegates, there's one person from the fossil fuel industry. So in fact, right now in Brazil, where I was in November, 1,600 plus fossil fuel lobbyists. That's like Alcoholics Anonymous holding a big global conference and Bacardi being the sponsor. And if you stay with the Alcoholics Anonymous, analogy, imagine the largest delegation to the conference. It's like having a conference to end slavery, and the largest delegation to the conference are the slave owners. Right? And so this is a time for us to begin to question some of the basic things that are going wrong. So some of you might have heard of the famous speech that the Canadian Prime Minister gave at Davos, where he said, correctly so, that what we are going through now is not a transition, but a rupture. We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation, it calls for honesty about the world as it is. Now, what he said was quite good, but actually it was not good for those of us in the global south, because largely he was talking to middle powers, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and so on. So now let's just do another pop quiz. You know, in the old days, they used to say third world, first world, right? Or developed, developing, right? Now the more politically correct way is to talk about the global south and global north. Not that there's not complications with that framing as well, right? So if we talk about the global south, that is people living in the global south, what percentage of people do you think in the world live in the global south? I'll give you 4 options. How many of you think it's 50? Okay, so the 4 options are 55, 60, 74, 88. How many of you think that 55% of the world's population lives in the global south? Put up your hands. Nobody. How many of you think 60% of the world's population lives in the global south? 1 person there. How many of you think 74% of the world's population lives in the global south? Okay, about 1/3 of the audience. How many of you think that 88% of the world's population lives in the global south? How ridiculous is that? That is the correct answer. And by the way, both ChatGPT and DeepSeek both agree on this question. Right? So, imagine that when we talk about the international community, when we talk about international law, where is the majority of the people in the world? We are spectators in a game that we need to be central players in. And unless we change that dynamic, we will never win the struggles that we need to. For many countries, this is an apocalyptic moment. Public health programs, funding from USAID and so on are drying up. I use the word apocalyptic with intention. Its Greek root, apocalypsis, means to unveil. In ancient Greece, you might be surprised to know, the apocalypse took place at weddings, the unveiling. When the bride took off her veil and the groom would see her face for the very first time. Yeah, you see, the Greeks taught the Muslims that. So this moment is apocalyptic in another sense. It reveals the myth of benevolence that has long underpinned our global order. It's been false, it's been hypocritical, and most of us in the global south have been treated as not just second-class citizens, but as third-class citizens. And that is why you can have the kind of genocide we had in Gaza. You can see that school with young girls being killed, just like that. And countries who have nuclear weapons and are telling everybody else you shouldn't have nuclear weapons can just waltz into countries that they decide and do their damnness. So every crisis is a rupture, an opportunity. And I want us to look at this rupture. This crisis as an opportunity to shift away from the US and global North dominance and an undemocratic, incoherent, and weak international system. Amidst a nightmare, we must dream. I want us to look at what the universe teaches us. The global financial crisis in 2008, COVID in 2020, right? These crises were saying to us, your systems don't work, right? Imagine during COVID, you remember that term, essential worker? It wasn't the fat cats driving around in luxury cars. It was our taxi drivers, our bus drivers, our train drivers, our people who work in the store. And suddenly we realized that these are the most essential people for the functioning of our society, but we treat them with such an absence of respect. Everything from remuneration and how we treat them. So, what we see in the middle of the crisis, our political leaders do summon some courage to talk about what is needed when they're in the crisis. So like during COVID, you might have heard many leaders, including some of our leaders here in South Africa, talk about build back better, build back better. I got so tired of hearing them saying build back better, and I said, I hope that this time they will genuinely do what the crisis taught us. But once the Band-Aid is put over the problem, the thing is contained, it's business as usual. So what we need is system innovation, system transformation, and system redesign. And what we always get from those in power, corporate and governmental power, is all about system recovery, system protection, and system maintenance. This is especially true when we look at climate, right? Now, one of the main reasons why we've not been living on climate, and I'm going to try and do something that we climate activists don't do, which is try to just say it like a simple story. So imagine one day you wake up in the morning, you're late, you rush to work or to school, and then you come back at the end of the day, you open the door, and you see there's some water coming out of the bathroom. As you pass the kitchen, you pick up a mop, you go into you open the bathroom door and you say, ooh, in rushing, I left the stopper on and the tap was dripping and it's filled over the day and so on. What do you do first? Do you start mopping the floor first or you turn off the tap first? Of course you turn off the tap. And our leaders have been mopping up the problem but not turning off the tap. And this is stupidity at its most extreme. So I have been working now for more than 4 years as a volunteer and for the last 2 years as president to do what humanity has done before. When nuclear weapons were out of control, we had a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. When the ozone layer was creating problems, we got a treaty and we did a zone. And importantly, in Southern Africa played a big leadership on landmines. We got a landmine treaty where we got governments to stop the mass production, distribution, and use of landmines. So some of you might say, whew, you must be a crazy person. How is it possible to even talk about a treaty in this current global environment when we got in the White House a pedophile, as somebody who has been convicted of sexual assault, somebody who has been 32 felonies against him, and so on. And somebody, by the way, there was just a study done on Donald Trump, you'll be happy to know. They worked out only 4% of what he says in a single day is actually true. Seriously, you can go check this. So basically, in April this year, we are starting the process of getting the most ambitious countries together to say we're not waiting anymore. So we've got close to 20 countries who have endorsed the idea of building a treaty that doesn't say that we can switch off fossil fuels tomorrow. Obviously, we cannot. But we need a fast, fair, and funded. And let's be very clear. When we ask for funding from rich countries in the global north, we're not asking for charity. We are saying, pay your climate debt. You built your economies on ecological destruction, and we now are paying the price. Because sadly, the emissions that go up in the atmosphere, whether you emit from Australia or whether you emit from South Africa, we all pay the same price. So the good news is, in November, sorry, just go back a sec. In April, we will have the first conference on the international phase-out of fossil fuels. And importantly, 3 of the countries leading the process are fossil fuel exporters, whose economies depend on selling oil, coal, and gas. Colombia, Pakistan, and Timor-Leste, or East Timor, some of you might know. Because they said, of course, our economies are currently dependent on it, but if we don't transition, we kill our societies. And we have to make that change, and we have to do it fairly. So momentum is building, and I want to tell you here in Africa, there's about 15 countries that we've been engaging in, and in January, I was just in Ghana, where we had a 100 persons in a national dialogue led by the minister and myself, and this is what the minister said. Ghana welcomes the idea of a fossil fuel treaty and recognizes the efforts of the growing bloc of nations already engaging. It is time for more African nations to join the bloc so that the terms of any future agreement prioritizes Africa's development needs, secure transition finance, unlock technology transfer, support debt relief, and ensure that no one is left behind. So I'm going to skip this one and say, we know we can no longer delude ourselves by separating climate, energy, and food from economic growth and basic human well-being. One of the biggest mistakes the environmental movement made was framing climate change as an environmental issue. Climate change is a cross-cutting issue. It's a failure of our economic system, our food system, our energy system, our transport system. And framing it as an environmental issue was a grievous error that history will judge us for. And we ignored what the women's movement taught us. You know, the women's movement for decades gave us the most powerful concept, but a rather cumbersome word. Anybody knows what word I'm talking about? Intersectionality, right? We have to understand how the different struggles we face are connected with each other, because none of them exist in isolation. So as I begin to conclude, I want to just talk then about all these great reports that you see coming out all the time. And I can tell you that these do not reach ordinary people. There is, and as Dennis Brutus himself put it, he said, there's a clear role for culture in the liberation struggle. There can be no true culture where there is no freedom. And by the way, he said this in Algiers in 1969 at the first Pan-African Cultural Festival. But the crisis we face is not only technical, it is cultural, political, and moral. If we respond only with more data, we will lose. We must tell stories that resonate with people. A person telling you their story shifts consciousness more powerful than a 200-page report. A film humanizes what numbers flatten. In a country, and I quote here the beautiful words of Dennis Brutus, in a country which denies the men and women are human, where the Constitution excludes them as subhumans, the creative act is an act of dissent and defiance. Creative ability is quintessential part of being human. To assert one's creativity is also to assert one's humanity. So I just thought I'd share this. This is like slightly on the lighter side. So, you know, somebody who gave his life like Dennis Brutus for his entire life, you can just imagine there are many moments that he was quite pissed off and mad, you know, angry with the situation. And he said this, you could go to an embassy to raise an issue on South Africa or even to get travel documents to enter a country and you kick your heels in the corridors for days on end. When I am angry or frustrated and I don't want to get mad because then I would lose a grip on the situation, I turn inwards and I write poetry instead. And to all the young people that are here, let me just say, you have every reason to be disappointed, to be sad, to be mad. But please, do not allow my generation of leadership, which has lost its way, to deprive you of the hope that you need to have to address the challenges that we face. And if I can go, I'm almost done. And I want to talk about hope in a second, especially to young people. But I want to say if there's one message that you leave with here tonight, is the message that's up on the screen. In the moment of history that we find ourselves, pessimism is a luxury we simply cannot afford. And the pessimism that justifiably emerges from our analysis, our lived experiences, and our observations can, must, and should be responded to by the optimism of our thought, our action, our creativity, our courage, and our sense of humanity. So shortly after Archbishop Desmond Tutu passed, a week later, one of the things Ricardo, who you knew as Ricky Rick, said to Louisa and I, he said, you know, one of the things your generation had that we don't, he said, listen, we are grateful that your generation, so many of your friends were killed and murdered and sent to exile and so on, and we're glad we don't have to do that. But he said, you all had something that we don't have. And you know what that is? Hope that things are going to get better. Because, you know, however bad it was in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we always had a sense that we're going to defeat the system and things are going to get better. And we need to give hope and create the conditions for our young people that things are going to get better. And then he says to his mom and I, you know, you guys are really not good at what you'll do. You'll been fighting for human rights, democracy, gender equity and all since you were teenagers. And when I look at the world, it's all moving in the wrong direction. So why don't you just chill, accept that you're old? Spend the time you should have spent with us when you're unsuccessfully running around the world trying to save it. Louisa was then executive director of Oxfam South Africa. And so we asked him, why is it we are not winning? He said, because you'll aim all your narratives at the brain and you'll ignore the heart, the body, and the soul. Right? And in another conversation some years earlier, he said to me, you know, sometimes I walk, he lived with me for 6 months when I was at Greenpeace. He came to help settle me in. And one day he told me, you know, I know that you're speaking English when you're having your Zoom calls, but it sounds like if you're speaking some other dialect. The language you'll use, only like a handful of people can understand what you're talking about. So I want to invite, with your permission, my wonderful wife, Louisa, to just finish off the speech for me. And we're going to we're going to try to get you all to stand up and dance with us, right? But Louisa will introduce the song, and I'll give it to her.
Only Kumi could do that, so I oblige. The song that will play is Sondela. You may all know it, but it has been adapted in the spirit of really connecting narratives to what moves us. And in as much as Sondela was produced as a song of two lovers making up, now it has been adapted to be a song of humanity making up with the planet. I hope the video will play, and our youngest son, directed by Mr. Mann here, produced that video, which is an adaptation of the song Sondela, in which Ricardo was featured. So it's all dance. And by the way, I have been moved so deeply by this mural. May I just take the moment to say this? It just has been moving me to the core. Thank you.
Sorry, so I should just tell you that this was the last song that Ricardo produced, and he was doing all of the things, in collectives, because he was always, once he made it big, he was always trying to pick up, other people around him. And so we used to listen to this song and cry a lot in the weeks and months after he passed. And then, as Louisa said, one day we looked and we said, this is a love song, yeah, between two people, but this could be a love song between the people and the planet making up. And this is what the song is. I will invite all of you to stand up and dance to the song.
Thank you, Dr. Kumi Naidu. I think this is the liveliest a public academic lecture has ever been. A lot of club vibes happening here, a lot of club vibes, but all good, we loved it. It was beautiful. And thank you once again for letting us in, and for letting us just be part of that. And yeah, it's going to be a tough act to follow, but I'm sure you'll make up. We got Sister Nikazi in the house, and she's from the TIA, and she is the respondent this evening. And I think it's, on a serious note, I think you spoke about the funding part that needed to be seen, and you spoke about Global South. And so, as South Africans, we want to know, what is government going to do about this crisis that the front row says it's too late for? I mean, we were hanging on to what Rose had earlier said to us. She said to us, we must have stubborn hope. So Rose said have stubborn hope, and then other people are telling us it's too late to have stubborn hope. But it can't be. It can't be. So I think, Ms. Sandokazi, you must have innovations, you must have solutions, you must have answers to our prayers so that we can learn from this. And I'm sure a country like South Africa, we are not lagging behind. I'm sure there are things happening we may not be aware of, and this is why we want to glean your insights. And from a scientific perspective, we are the demographic majority, but we possibly the economic minority in this country. So who suffers the most? We tell a tale of two worlds, not even two countries. Because there are many people who don't live the same way a small percentage of people who carry the wealth in this country live. And to those people that are not in this room this evening, what are the words that we convey to them? How do we change this planet and really give hope a true meaning? So, welcome and thank you. We look forward to your debate and your dialogue.
Molweni, I hope I'm going to get this one right. Goeienaand. Got it right. I did a good 51% for Afrikaans in my matric, and my daughter's favorite subject is Afrikaans, so she's getting me there. I wanted the other third greeting. Molweni, goeienaand, good evening. Good evening. Otherwise, the university would punish me for not saying it in English. I must say, before I stood up, I wanted to say, Dr. Naidu reminded me of one of my favorite authors, Dr. Simon Korwanteng Pipim. He writes a book that says, "Must we be silent?" But as I'm thinking about that again, he reminds me of the speech recently, if you would have watched the funeral of Pastor Jesse Jackson. Obama rose to say, we live in times where it is hard to hope. But what gives me hope, I think, this evening is a book by Zoleka Mandela, who has recently passed away, which says, "When Hope Whispers." Now I'm going to speak as a technocrat, I'm going to speak as a business person, I'm going to speak as an investor, and I'm going to speak at heart as a greenery. And I speak from a place of 2010. The person that we are speaking now, and I think to your question, Dr. Naidu, around where we are we on track, or are we getting there, or must we lose hope? I wanted to raise my hand and say, number one, I think we're on track. I think I want to put it to the room that I think we're on track. I stand here as one of the first project leaders of the first commercial wind farm in South Africa, producing 2,000 megawatts, 2 megawatts to 2,000 homes in Kamvelihle and Wesley Estate. This was in 2010. When it was not fashionable to do renewables and to look at alternative energy, when it was not fashionable to talk about environmental sustainability, that wind farm, it was one at that time, was powering the World Cup, which gave a glimmer of hope to other African countries which flooded in the country, to the global community which flooded in South Africa. And I want to give some few stats of where I think we are in terms of facts and numbers. Where we are at the moment, we currently stand at close to about 34 operational wind farms in South Africa, right? 34 producing 3,000 megawatts of electricity from the wind. We currently stand at about 63 solar farms, producing about 4,000 megawatts of electricity. And it dares me to say, hope is whispering. When we talk about environmental degradation and the challenges, I want to stand, I think Dr. Naidu has done a great job of sharing the challenges. And I think the video that we've just listened to, we've seen, shows the challenge. But I want to sit on the other side this evening and share with you the facts of where we are and the opportunities, especially for young people that sit in this. I did a basic degree in science. And when 2008 hit, government did a great thing. It went to universities to look for black young talent, even for white, all races, of course, for that talent to say, what do we do as a country? Of course, one might ask Dr. Naidu, were we caught with our pants down? That in 2008, when we lost investments, it was not because we did not have intellectual capacity. It was not because we did not have endowments and natural resources. It was not because we didn't have the money. It's simply that we did not have enough electricity to carry the opportunity that was coming into the country. And of course, then the question was, what do we do? Because you had a situation where environmental degradation was eating up investments. And the question is always, can these two balance? Can the effects of climate change balance your growth of economy? And what is the solution? So of course, the government did an honorable thing and took a cohort of us to go and look at what could be the solution to your question, MC. What could be the solution? We went around the world, Germany, to look at different lessons and how these two could exist. Environmental sustainability, where you need to start shifting, because the fact is, over and above your fossil fuels, Dr. Naidu, being what we call a travesty to the environment, they are depleting. At some point, if you solely rely on your coal, which is depleting because it's from the ground. It says, I mean, a lot of other studies talk about it having 50 years or 60 years, but at some point, it's not going to be there. So the question is, what are the alternatives? So of course, the country had to look at that. And of course, the country then came with what is called the Integrated Resource Plan. From an energy perspective, they said, because our fossil fuels do not only harm the environment, but because they are not sustainable, at some point they will exit and would need to have these resources. What then do we do? Of course, the government has established what is called from several years now, from 2010, the Integrated Resource Plan, which gives a beautiful energy mix. Of course, it talks about us having an alternative and a solution, MC, of renewable energy. We're talking about wind and solar, which I was mentioned here, and there's vast of them in the Eastern Cape. I don't want to break it down for the sake of time, because we are endowed with wind as a natural resource, we're endowed with the sun as a natural resource. However, what remains a challenge is their intermittency. When there's no sun, what do you do? When there's no wind, what do you do? Now, of course, technically, when we talk about environmental or sustainability, or rather say degradation, the biggest cause of that is your carbon emissions, your sulfur, right? Your sulfur content. Do you have any physics students or learners in the house? Science learners in the house? I would have loved if they were around, and hope. So that's what you argue about from a technocratic perspective. Now, if you look at Dr. Naidu, you mentioned, sadly for me, as one of the project leaders and the champions of natural gas, unfortunately, you mentioned, of course, there's coal and so forth. Strikingly, the same government, to your point, that is advocating for environmental sustainability and alternative fuels, your energy, your solar and your wind, which literally have the lowest percentage of carbon emissions. Now, what carbon does, it then affects the ozone layer, which then becomes thinner and thinner, then it becomes hotter and hotter, then it affects the longevity of your life, maybe in simple terms, right? Now, then the question is, but we have to find a balancing act. Do we then say fossil fuels must be done away with? We've got 60 years of coal, which employs our people. There's a future in it. There's economic development in it. What do we do? We've got now discoveries of natural gas in the Karoo. What do we do? You've got uranium in the country. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy published last year a critical mineral strategy. One of the critical mineral strategies there, maybe to challenge you, Dr. Naidu, is coal. Right? It's coal. It's a critical mineral that the government has said we will continue to fund its exploration. One of the critical minerals there we have, of course, is uranium, which creates a balancing act. Uranium is the mineral, of course, that is used for the generation of electricity in the form of what is called nuclear energy. How many of you know how many nuclear power stations we have in the country? We've got one, right, which produces about 5% of our electricity. Do you know that nuclear is one of the lowest carbon emitting fuels? It is one of the cleanest fuels. And uranium is endowment that we have. Now the question is is there a balancing act between environmental sustainability and the economics and the endowment that we have, right? So you've got, so the critical mineral strategy talks about uranium. It talks about, again, platinum group metals. Platinum group metals are what are used for generating, or rather say producing green hydrogen, which is a cleaner fuel, right? So at least in my perspective, and I want to put forward as a reflection from Dr. Dr. Naidu's speech, is the fact that I think we can find a balancing act. I think environmental sustainability is not intertwined, does not live away from economic development. It does not lead away from skills development. I think environmental sustainability in its embodiment is intertwined to economic development. We went to Germany and they had a treaty there, Dr. Naidu, which was saying 100% renewable energy, wind and solar and so forth. I think a few years after that, the country went into darkness. So what I want to put is that sustainability looks at two things. Sustainability in terms of health, environmental health, in terms of affordability of your resources, your electricity or your water, but also in terms of longevity, economically, can you sustain the country? Now, if you take coal, which is about 60 years to go, right, which is, of course, got higher emissions, then you are able to present an alternative of renewables, and then that creates what is called an energy mix. Of course, one of the things we talk about is an energy trilemma, which talks about the cost of electricity, the sustainability, the security of electricity, but also the availability of electricity, and of course the sustainability aspect. The question is, if you close all those power stations, if you avoid exploration of uranium and coal, how do you sustainably survive as a country? If you are not able to balance the act and the mix, and from a technical perspective, reduce your carbon emissions in so much that they don't cause harm, but they bring economic development. So I think the discussion should be that environmental sustainability bringing opportunities for economic development. So I think I'm going to be quite short because there's going to be questions and answers. So I think where I am is basically saying I relate a lot to, of course, Dennis Brutus as well. One of the things I really liked about him is the fact that we are both alumni of the University of Forte. And of course, he was born in Zimbabwe. And in Zimbabwe, I met a very young, handsome man who decided to take me as a beautiful wife. As you can see, I'm a Moyo. So there's a lot of commonalities. And of course, my handsome husband is an author, a poet, just like Dennis Brutus. So it's something, he's a person I've followed for years who's close to our family. And I was moved here as well by the music. I think I also felt that I must share that. See, my daughter is a violinist, is an artist. She paints. She's 10 years old and she's critically and damn good. So I relate to art as well. So I think for me, all those things can coexist. I think you mentioned again, as my parting shot, Dr. Naidu, how we communicate and what we communicate, and the opportunities to learn. As a technology innovation agency, to your point, MC, one of the things we are endowed with is to looking at investing in different solutions to environmental sustainability and how we could achieve this. One of the biggest programs we have is around renewable energy investments, is around green hydrogen investments, is around small modular reactors for nuclear, because it's a clean energy and we have it as an endowment. It's about the energy mix. And when you will remember when the Israelites, as I sit down, when the Israelites are going to be taken out of Egypt by God, God approaches Moses and asks him a question. Moses is holding a what? A rod, right? Then he asks Moses, what do you have in your hand? Use it. Use it for good. Environmental, use it. If we're saying uranium or whatever else is not clean enough, let's teach people how to use it in a clean manner. Because, I remember, Dr. Naidu might not remember this, there were times when we were in loggerheads with Greenpeace. Of course, the advocation was always, let's go 100% renewables. Then we went to wind, and then they came to block our EIA because the wind turbine was going to cut the birds. The speed, remember, of course, the wind turbine moves this way. So we're always asking, but what do greenerites want? We give them wind, then they talk about birds. So it's a joke, by the way. It's meant to be a joke. So the discussion is always around finding the balancing act. I think I just want to share other few facts. again, before I sit down. Of course, I think one of the things the MC also mentioned, which triggered me, is around systematic innovation and value chain. Look at environmental solutions from a value chain perspective, from a systems perspective. What systems do we need to put in place to make sure that those solutions for environmental sustainability are put into place? And of course, one of the things we've done with one of the power stations, it was a sad day when a power station in Mpumalanga, I'm just forgetting the name, was closed. One of the things we did as an agency, I mean, there were thousands of women and men who were working there, mothers, fathers, young fathers, executives, and the power station was closing down, producing about 1,000 megawatts, because it was at the time, and it still is, the time of the just energy transition. What I said to the team is, of course, this is a discussion we had with ESCOM. What will happen to these people when this coal-fired power station closes? We then found a solution. Coming to your point, NC, we got one of the technologies we funded of mushrooms, right? A young man who's growing mushrooms. Now, ESCOM said, when these people live here, the transition, you spoke about justice, Dr. Naidu. How will closure of coal mines, shutting off fossil fuels be just? What is just about taking someone's bread and butter? Up until you are in that industry, then you'll feel it. What we then did, we said, okay, the coal-fired power station, of course, is closing mainly because also one of the reasons was the lifetime. They brought a concept of agrivoltaics, where you've got your solar farms. Under the solar farm, you then plant vegetables. Then you assist communities to be able to have their own farms growing under the solar PV. Now, the problem is with green jobs. Of course, we always argue that they are lesser than your brown jobs, because the solar panel, what are you going to do? All you're going to do is to clean it and versus the hard labor jobs. So we then came with a solution of saying, the transition to cleaner fuels must be just. Let's have a replacement. And I think my charge to you as well, Doc, is as the treaty moves along to close fossil fuels, let's have solutions to keep those jobs. What do we put as an alternative to keep those jobs? Because environmental sustainability cannot take away bread and butter issues. We must challenge ourselves as we challenge ourselves to communicate how bad they are. But environmental sustainability is about making sure that when we switch off the coal power station, it doesn't take away a loaf of bread from another person. It must be just. So that's one of the things that I think I want to challenge the room as well, that we should do as we communicate and whatever, and we advocate for the transition. And I think my last point again, we talk about of course, the integrated resource plan, which of course still has space for your coal, your nuclear, your whatever. One of the things I think I also want to commend Transnet for, I see some of the Transnet colleagues in the room. Again, you spoke about water, Dr. Naidu, which is a very critical subject. At the moment, in Gauteng, where I'm currently based, you might have seen the saga, right, of Lusufi, who had said people must go and shower in hotels. There's issues of water quality. There's issues of water shortages. The question is, and that's because of the waters drying up, because of the thinning ozone layer. And if you come to PE, all the coastal cities, there's abundant sea. In my first year, I was taught that you can drink water from the sea using what is called desalination. You take out the salt, you leave the clean water and you drink it. What do you have in your hand to solve the environmental? You have the sea just close to you. You can build a desalination plant which gives you water abundantly because the sea will not go dry. We've seen this in Saudi Arabia. So I think my message is that from this conversation, Dr. Naidu has challenged us about what it does to the planet, and it is true. And the question is, and the response is, what then do we do? What do we have in our resources as resources to make sure that it does not die from both that environmental perspective and economic perspective? So those are the solutions that continue to exist, that as we preach environmental sustainability, it should never be separated from economic development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Ndokazi. Sister Ndokazi is from the TIA. It's a South African public entity under the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. Please do come up on stage. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't know what we should be fighting for, an economy or a planet. But you said the planet will be fine, it's us that will be gone. So we mustn't worry, it's fine. Are we okay? No, the planet's okay, but we are not.
No, I think Sister Ndu makes a very important point, and I try to make the same point in the sense of being able to make the connection between economic development. And just to be clear, in the work of the treaty, when we talk about just transition, just to clarify, a lot of the conversations around just transition have been primarily about workers in the fossil fuel industry. Now, obviously, it's important that we take care of the workers in the fossil fuel industry. However, what about the woman who sells potatoes and tomatoes and onions to the people who work? What about the mechanic that fixes the car of the coal miners and so on? So in the work that we are doing now, and this is why we are putting such pressure on the global north, because basically we have won the commitments about money. 100 billion per year was committed already in 2009. It's not been delivered. Small amounts have been coming through. Even on a loss and damage fund, like our city, Durban, right, a few months after Ricardo passed, I think 2 months after Ricardo passed, in 2 days, we lost 500 people like that. 2 days. In the worst flooding we had ever seen. So yes, let me just end. So I think there has to be a reality wake-up moment, right? We cannot say we accept the science, and the science is telling us that we cannot get more than 1.5 degrees temperature rise. How many of you know where we are at the moment? So just for those of you who don't know, the science has been saying for 30-ish years that from the time that the Industrial Revolution started, from the time that we started burning oil, coal, and gas, that we cannot have more than a 1.5 degree temperature collective rise. Anybody knows where we are at the moment?
We're already past 1.5 watts.
Yeah. And do you know what people in the Pacific, anybody disagrees with that? She's correct. So in 2015, in the Pacific Island states and the Caribbean and so on, I learned a very chilling slogan. People were chanting, 1.5 to stay alive. 1.5 to stay alive. 6 months later, I met the same people in the Paris climate negotiation. They invited me to come and speak to them, and I was about to go 1.5 to stay alive, you know, to show like I was with it. And they go like this, no, the slogan has changed in 6 months. And the new slogan is 1.5, we might survive, right? So we are dealing with a terrible case of cognitive dissonance, right? Because our political leaders have delayed things for so long and have ignored the science. We are in a situation where we can't switch off because fossil fuels is very baked in. But what we are saying is we need to get governments to commit to a timeline that is fast, that is fair, and is funded by the rich nations that drove us to this point. So that's what we are saying. And you know, the 3 words are, we need to avert catastrophic, runaway, irreversible climate change. Yeah. So where we are now is we are in the first phase of catastrophe. You ask people in parts of the Horn of Africa and so on, where the land is completely destroyed, it's finished for them, right? So, but we have not reached the place, to the young people especially, we have not reached that moment of irreversible and runaway. We are close to it and getting closer and closer by the minute, but we have not got there yet. So therefore, it's still within our capability to force our leaders to make a change. I'd like to say something about nuclear, but I'll hold that for later, before we finish. Yeah, I want to say something about that.
Okay, I think our schedule allows for about 9 minutes, and then we're doing a vote of thanks. And I just want to remind everyone that the Mandela University Press has a dozen book titles, revolutionaries. I saw very good titles at the back, so please, you are welcome to purchase, and don't forget to buy. I'm going to open the session to the floor. I'm going to ask whoever's watching the YouTube channel to also give me any questions that are raging on the platform as well, or comments to make. So can I get a hand for a question? Thank you. Okay, there's quite a few, so that's awesome. I think then let's just have the roving mic. So it's...
One? Oh. No, it's on. Thank you, Tasneem. I don't want to belay, and I don't want to even beleaguer any of the two arguments. Just one comment and two small questions. One comment is, it's not a facetious comment, but it's during the Pleistocene era, there was fluctuations in climate change, dramatic, almost in a lifetime, that drove evolution, that drove us as human beings to adapt. So I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but I'm saying there are good things that come from it. That's one, just a statement. The other one is, I'm into this kind of theory things, Tesla was said to have discovered sort of enormous energy, and then was shut down. I don't know if that is true, but that is what I've read, that in terms of electricity and stuff like that, that he could have this renewable energy that is free and cheap. And then the last one is I want to ask something about nuclear fusion. I've been hearing about that, and how far is that? Because that's also a kind of renewable source that it doesn't affect ozone layers and stuff like that. So that's my questions here.
Who are your questions directed to?
Both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I was dying to take the nuclear questions. I'll take it. So bottom line is, I oppose nuclear power for the following reasons. That nuclear is too expensive, it's too dangerous, and as a solution to addressing climate change will deliver too little, too late. So let me explain those terms. Expense, today, the cost of nuclear compared to solar, wind, and other emerging clean energies is far, far too expensive. Let me just say this. If Duduzani, Zuma, and Gupta in Shiva uranium, which our ANC government under Zuma was driving, if we had not defeated that nuclear deal in court, and I want to pay tribute here to a woman from Soweto, Makoma Lakalaka from Earthlife Africa, and a woman from Cape Town. Oh my God, I'm having a senior moment there. Liz, yeah. From SAFSE, who led that campaign. We won't have a country today to talk about, right? That deal with Putin, which was going to be a corrupt deal, right? And by the way, what you need to understand with governments, our government is not unique, but our government is particularly attracted to it. They love big infrastructure projects. Do you know why? Because the corruption chain is much more juicier, much more bigger, and so on. So let's be very clear. We dodged a bullet when we stopped the Zuma-Gupta nuclear deal, right? The other reason why we must oppose nuclear, this country is a water-stressed country. And nuclear technology, as well as coal, by the way, requires a very high level of water use. So for us to be investing in any technology, right? And then, do you know how long it takes to build a single nuclear plant? Anybody want to guess? Average? 10 years, right? So plus or minus 10. But say Russia, when it builds it in Russia, can do it in 7 to 10 years. But when it does it outside, can take up to 20, 30 years. And the costs just, And now let me end with the main reason. So let's say I'm a representative of the nuclear industry. I came before you and I said, I can guarantee you that there will never be a human error. I can guarantee you there'll never be a technological failure, and let's say you believe that. I can guarantee you there'll never be a tsunami like we saw in Japan with Fukushima, right? And let's say you believed all of that. You would have been really stupid to believe that, but let's say you believed it, right? But you know the one thing that I can't try to convince you? I can't convince you that we have a safe way of storing nuclear waste at the end of the nuclear cycle. So basically, if you look at the countries that produce nuclear, and I've seen it with my own eyes in Germany, in France, and so on, do you know when they bury the nuclear waste deep in the ground in northern Germany, for example, do you know how long it takes before that waste is not dangerous to humans? We're talking hundreds of years. So I used to say to President Zuma, I will believe you that you're serious about nuclear if you tell us that that nuclear waste is going to be buried in Nkandla or in Saxon world where the Guptas were living, then we'll take you serious. Bottom line is, I thought what you said about desalination plants, I fully support that, right? We should be thinking about investing in solar-driven desalination plants because we are a water-stressed country. All the good work you did on wind, for example, in this province, all I'm saying to you is, why can we not take it to scale? And the last thing I would say, if this government, which uses rural people every day in the discourse and abuses them, I tell you this, for one corrupt Zupta deal, just take that railway thing with China, just that one deal. If we took that money, we could have taken half the villages of South Africa out of rural poverty. Why? We don't need big transmission lines running to rural areas. We can do micro solar grids cheaply, fast, and accessibly, right? And these things, and understand, energy is not just about lights. It's about education, it's about health, it's about employment opportunities, and so on. And the fact that 30 years later, the majority of people in rural areas do not have affordable, accessible energy is one of the biggest crimes of this ANC, which Louisa, myself, and many of y'all gave our lives to, and they must be called that they have betrayed us, and they must change course, and if they don't change course, our people will take care of them at the next election.
Sure. I think I wanna speak again from a position of spending about 6 years in a nuclear facility at Pelindaba, right? Has anyone heard of a nuclear catastrophe in South Africa with in Cape Town, the country runs 1,800 megawatts of a nuclear power station. Its life has been extended now to a couple of more years. Have we ever had a nuclear explosion in South Africa? None. We are running one of the safest nuclear, to your point, Doc, very true. One of the safest nuclear storage facilities right underground in Valpoorts, run by a company called Enrwadi, Nuclear Waste Disposal Institute. It's one of the best in the world. We, from the nuclear non-proliferation, right, again going back to the Balancing Act and what nuclear and uranium does as a fossil fuel. NEXA, the South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, right, one of the best run nuclear facilities in the world, has a 20 megawatts nuclear plant, which produces what saved my life last week, iodine 191. This is from nuclear uranium, your fossil fuel. We sell it, we're the third largest producer of technetium. All of, nuclear, when we talk about nuclear, it's not only about power, and of course, again, coming to the cleanliness and the value of it, it's about medicine as well. It saves lives every day in Steve Biko, in all of these other facilities all over the country and the world. And now let's go again, Doc, and I'm loving this debate. Having spent 6 years in a nuclear facility, every day entering and exiting there, doing the economics of the numbers, when you look at renewables, the cost, capital cost is quite cheap, right? Because all you do, you dig the ground, you put this thing, white thing with whatever, it takes about, to assemble a nuclear wind farm is about a week. I ran the project, right, at Kucha. A solar farm is the same thing, right? The capital cost is quite significantly low, but over time, the costs become something else, right? To maintain, and of course, the energy balance and the cost of the intimities. Of course, one would argue, to your point of Tesla, one of the things that Tesla uses the most and was advocating for was lithium-ion batteries. And of course, now we're moving into, from a technological perspective, we're moving to sodium-ion batteries. That's what Tesla uses. And of course, in South Africa, we've got one of the best battery technologies, one of the best battery minds who are sitting at the Council for Science and Industrial Research, Dr. Mike Thackeray, who owns the IP to that lithium battery. Now, Tesla, of course, the shameful thing is that there's an administration in the US which changed the regime of alternative energy, and unfortunately, you'd know this talk, right? And what he was then, from a commercial perspective, he would get, of course, when you are in the business of renewable energy, you then are able to count what is called carbon credits. Carbon credits you can sell and make money. There was a year when Tesla was making more money from selling carbon credits. So what they would do, Doc, they would then take carbon credits and they would sell to someone who's doing fossil fuels in China for that person to be exempted. So those were the technicalities of what Tesla was doing, and that's where they are. It's one of the best green vehicles and e-mobility vehicles anyway. So now getting back to nuclear, the economics of it. Of course, the capital cost of nuclear are a bit higher than your solar and so forth. But in the long term, the cost of and the sustainability and the fact that you have it as a base load. So in energy, we've got what is called base load, and then of course you've got the intermittent one. It's existingly there, but when you look at the pricing over time, nuclear is quite cheap, is quite cleaner. And I want to implore young people as well. Experience is a great teacher. And of course, Doc, to your point, some of the decisions, we make them because of what other people have done with the opportunities, whether it could be corruption and so forth, and we should never allow the mishaps of previous leaders to stop us from developing, because they then would have achieved what they wanted to do. If there was any, I want to be very clear about this, corruption around nuclear, it should not take away from the value of nuclear, because then corruption would have reached its objective, because its objective is to steal hope and opportunity and intellectual capital. So I think from the economics and the technicalities of it, we sit, and I mean, I will volunteer to take some people from the room at the university can even afford the opportunity for you to go into Nexa, that nuclear facility, and learn the economics of nuclear. Your life will never be the same again. So I think I do agree from a perspective of what has happened with certain deals, it could lead to certain, but we should never allow the mishaps of other people to take away the opportunities that we have as a country. So I thought let me share those. And by the way, the Eskom power station in Mpumalanga is Komati power station. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. So we've ran one of the best. And by the way, of course, Doc, you are correct. To build a nuclear facility takes long, and that's why us, the clever technocrats, and I think the Minister of course of Electricity, Dr. Sputler. And one of the things we're investing in Estia, we're looking at investing in Estia, is what is called modular reactors, right? So instead of saying one thing as a 2,000 megawatts, right? You build 10 megawatts of these. It's microgrids, but of nuclear. It makes it quicker, affordable, cheaper, and you are building the skill in the country, right? And of course, you are correct. Microgrids in rural areas are the best. We've got some of them in most of the areas, and it's something I totally agree we should be from a solar perspective. So, and of course, what Transnet is doing on desalination is that solar power desalination using renewables, and it's a model we've seen in Saudi Arabia, and I think they're doing very great work, right? The same thing with this, what the port system, you'll remember that there was a time when the ports were congested and were losing business to Mozambique, right? Because they were saying the cost of doing business in South African ports was quite high. Then Transnet took a strategy of saying, okay, we can balance this thing. And of course, one of the things that business, big industry does, and the reason why environmental sustainability is no longer a nice to have, it's not a peace thing, it's not an activism thing. I don't think you should be calling yourself an activist. It's a business thing, because when you go to a bank now as a SASOL, you are raising money for a new facility. The bank asks you a question, what is your ESG score? Environmental, sustainability, and governance score. They do not fund you if you don't have any green project. You do not get that money. We've seen the Transnet deal where they got money from the African Development Bank, right? We had to prove, I was a Transnet executive manager. We had to prove that we're doing something green in clean energy and in desalination for us to be approved for funding to sustain the business. So the capital markets know that environmental sustainability is an economic issue. It's not an activist matter, it's a bread and butter issue.
Thank you. I think, Jenny, you had a question and maybe just one other question so that, okay, sorry, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we close. Thank you. Shall we? Shall I take, or we over time, you fine? Okay, thank you.
My question, my name is Orik Swartboy. I do social impact assessments on some of these projects that you have been referred to. So I do get what both of you are saying, absolutely. My question to Kumi is simply the following. The 100 billion that you were referring to, can I ask you to please make sure that the 100 billion, that all of the 100 billion comes here and it is being spent here? That is what I would certainly like to happen. The question then basically to you is, what are you putting in place, stopgaps or questions, as I say, protecting that? Because I know a lot of that same 100 billion actually will stay in those very same countries that are spending the money here or supposed to invest it here for their own consultants, for example, to do the work actually on their behalf. So what are you basically putting in place to actually make sure that all of that money actually comes here and actually stays here?
Thank you very much. I'll try and keep mine brief. Basically, I want to ask about what, Kumi, what this idea of a just transition looks like. And not on the level of justice, but in terms of the amount of energy we're looking to produce through alternative means. Because the narrative I always sort of get is almost like we're trying to maintain our current economy, our current lifestyle, the current, all of that, but we're just trying to replace the source of the energy. And I don't think personally that our current economic model and energy consumption is sustainable. And even if you replace it with green energy, you're still, for example, if you need to store energy, you need lithium. Lithium is an extractive process. It's tied up in all sorts of injustices. So I suppose that's what I'm wanting to know in terms of how we're actually thinking about transition, and are we actually thinking of transitioning to a completely different system? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Gia Grant Rutledge. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer for the Kingdom Collective. We are a regenerative, not sustainable development company, so I want you to tap on that as we all use these terms, sustainability versus regenerative. Do we restore and innovate versus sustain what is? And then that's one thing, tap on that. And then two, can you talk more about why biomass energy hasn't been brought up in this conversation when you're in a region where there's so much access to invasive plants? There's agricultural waste in this area, cows, citrus, you name it. So why hasn't that been brought up in the conversation for those 2 points?
I think that's...
Oh, okay. My name is Zanokolo Palmer. I must say I've never been in a relevant space like this. I saw this lecture from Nobesuto's status, And I thought, no, let me come and attend this. I have worked under Tandogazi, Transnet, where she led the renewable energy desalination plants, and other initiatives that are meant to decarbonize our planet. As well as poet, walking the journey with Abu Mandlov and others. I completed my master's at Wits, where we are modeling the influence of the tides and waves and currents on coastal degradation. We see that there is a beach that we call it Brighton Beach, which is experiencing a drastic degradation. It's even closed, last time I checked. It used to be a prestigious beach where people from New Bright, Motherwell, and other places used to go, but now it's closed. It's evident that there is a big war between water and land, and the water is winning. We are doing these studies from these universities and scholars that are doing researches. We have recommendations that we give our departments, our government doing something about what is happening. Because there are recommendations and everything that we are producing as scholars. But the question to Sister Nogazi is that what are we doing as municipality, as Central, because there's infrastructure there that is also affected by the same thing. There's overtopping where ocean flow through the road and the road get closed like N2. It happens almost every year or a couple of years, but nothing is happening under our municipality here. I know it is a collective initiative, but I'm posing this question to our government. What are we doing about this? There are a lot of things that are happening. We once experienced distressful flooding here in PE, and we lost some lives and damage to infrastructure and other things. But the theory is there, but there are no solution that we see. Thank you.
Maybe start then you close the evening. Okay. I'll try it. I'm also not confident about it. Okay, thanks. Maybe let me start with the easier one on biomass. By the way, I did my master's in biofuels, where we were using cassava to draw ethanol and blend it with diesel and petrol, when we then would have what is called biodiesel and bioethanol, then it would then fuel cars to replace your diesel and so forth, which is from coal and what is called coal to liquids. And of course, I think the fact that it didn't come up is just a matter of time, but it is clouded under what is called renewable energy. The University of Fort Hare runs one of the best waste-to-energy facilities. They actually have the campus in Alice. They have a factory of bread that is fully powered by biofuels. They take waste, they incinerate it, and it then powers the factory. So it's a big thing. The same thing, not only from an electricity perspective, right, from a fuel perspective. If you go to shop right now and some spas, you will see some of the biofuels that are used in your stores and in your brine stands and in your... Now, what the challenge, of course, is that it hasn't reached an industrial scale, mainly because there's always a fight and a discussion around the fact that food security and the quantums that are required for you to produce at industrial scale. Do we have enough waste? And of course, there's the waste underneath, which is called from landfills. The municipality, again, going to the point of municipality, that municipality runs, it's eThekwini municipality, 7 megawatts of a landfill waste-to-energy facility powering the municipalities and some of the facilities. So it's a big opportunity. And of course, one of the opportunities is hydro. ESCOM runs one of the biggest hydropower stations. electricity from water, right? It's another solution that's available and it's abundant. And around the question of, and of course, one of the biggest other solutions is natural gas, which is now coming into South Africa, which is cleaner than your coal as an alternative. And Transnet, I know, is building one of the facilities or infrastructure for importing of gas. And the integrated resource plan makes provision of about 6,000 megawatts of that gas. The same for biomass is made provision for by government. The same for nuclear as well, about 5,000 megawatts. So to create that balancing act, hoping that the corrupt guys will be fended off that. With the Madlanga commissions, at least I think they're getting scared, eh? Don't you think so? Yeah, I think they're a bit nervous, so I don't think they will be as bad as they would have been. And then around the flooding and infrastructure, you see, one of the programs we ran as the Technology Innovation Agency. If you go to municipalities now, and even the ports, there's what is called water losses, just from a flooding and water, because of the water leaks, the badly managed infrastructure. That's the main challenge. And I think it goes to what Dr. Naidu mentioned, around what funds should be used for. South Africa has got an entity called Infrastructure South Africa, which is assisting municipalities at the moment to prepare infrastructure projects to deal with what we're talking about. Because one of the things that causes floods, is the age of the infrastructure for channeling the water when it's raining. It can no longer hold the water, right? I'm tempted to preach. It can no longer hold the water, so then there's bursting because the infrastructure is very old. There's not too much science to it. Nothing too complicated. It's about investing in infrastructure to hold the water, right? Number one. Number two is about maybe the quality of the EIAs that we should not be building. We sometimes build where we should not be building. There are people who maybe sometimes get paid to get these EIAs approved, right? And when some of the things are not done, but the biggest thing that we discovered was around the infrastructure maintenance. Hence, you would see a lot of municipalities now, there's a municipal infrastructure fund where they're trying to really get the infrastructure up to speed. Even infrastructure that, remember, climate, one of the things that we always talk about is climate resilience. How do we build climate resilient infrastructure? Because to Dr. Naidu's point, it is here, unfortunately. It caught us, but how do we then try and reverse and maintain and become resilient in the midst of it, right? So it's then building that climate resistant infrastructure so that even if, of course, there's force majeure, that's why every contract, I hope you read contracts, before you sign them, every contract has a force majeure clause. These are acts beyond anyone's control. You're right, that of course, we can't always argue flats, but yes, acts of God. Thank you for that, Dr. Kumi. Acts of God. And we must plan for the worst whenever we do planning. That means an Zanoklola is a planner by profession, right? So it's around planning what kind of infrastructure is required, and government must invest in that infrastructure. And one of the infrastructure to reverse flooding is looking at alternative sources, because the reason why there's floods is because you've got an opening here which then pushes a lot of water or eruption because of certain elements which have been zapped up by the kind of facilities and power stations that you run. So it's those types of things, and I hope there was someone from the municipality here who could really answer why they're not getting it done.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to say before I respond to the questions is to say that Sistando and I have obviously some differences on substantive issues, but let me just say this. How proud I am to sit next to her and have somebody who's established the kind of track record that she has in renewable energy, in technology, and so on, and just understand this. It is much easier walk in the park for a white male to do it than a black African woman to do it. And I just want to ask you to put your hands together. The second thing to Jenny. Jenny, your question puts the finger on the pulse of the challenge that we have, right? Because basically, you are asking the question, can we actually address the climate challenge within the current economic system or not? And the reality is the current economic system is absolutely broken, right? You know, it is people at the top that is sucking most of it. And you know, Sistando, one of the things I just want to tell you on a very personal basis, right? Why Louisa and I have so much of hesitancy of trusting that the government will do the right thing. We live in a low-income neighborhood in Joburg, out of choice, right? In Yeovil. I don't know whether people know. Anybody knows Yeovil?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
right? You know what we are dealing with there? We have a water tower, right, which pumps water to the community, right? There's a water mafia, right, that works with the people in Johannesburg Water to sabotage the water so that the tanker business can get certain contracts. Now, when I look at nuclear and I think the consequences of the risks associated with that, I get very scared.
Operating from a place of fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
But just to say that the question Jenny posed is the one that we have to reflect on.
Yeah.
We actually have to be thinking about what kind of, that's why I said what we need is system innovation,
Yes.
system transformation,
Yes.
and system redesign.
Yes.
All our systems.
Yes.
We are kidding ourselves that we can get justice for the majority of people in the world by working in the current system. Then I think your question on biomass was very well answered by my sister here. But just to say that I think personally there is potential in biomass, but we have to, as Sistando said, be very careful about whether food security gets undermined, because sometimes our governments, and we've seen it happen in parts of the world, they see some rich countries saying, oh, we can, if you produce so much of biofuels, we will buy it. And because it's hard currency, they start doing that and they forget about food security for their own people. And to my brother there, you know, the question, to answer your question is, how do we do it? To make sure that the money that we have fought so hard, blood, sweat, and tears at the global level, for it to come to the global south, that it goes where it needs to. How do we guarantee it? The short answer is with extreme difficulty, right? But that question must be answered, and it has a couple of different levels. One is absolute transparency about what that contract, that funding contract is. Because the problem is, it's not only the problem with the rich countries who give the money, it's also they colluding with corrupt elites in the global south and making deals and seeing how they can pull for themselves, right? Then the second thing is making sure that the processes of the multiple tenders involved is accessible, equitable, and fair, and gives, in our country, opportunities for small, medium-sized, and emerging players. Otherwise, it's just going to be big companies that will say, oh, it's still technologically complicated, and so on. And vigilance, vigilance, vigilance on the part of ordinary people is our best guarantee. So the last thing I wanted to say in conclusion is, you were talking about different, okay, so I had a meeting with President Ramaphosa in January of 2019 at the World Economic Forum, together with Minister Patel, right, over an Africa breakfast, and we were at the same table. And President Ramaphosa said, hey, Kumi, you are full of crazy ideas. Tell me 3 crazy ideas that, you know. So one is, I said, get us far ahead of the green technology curve now. Yeah. I pointed out that Stellenbosch University actually has one of the best solar panels in the world. It's circular, it can adjust to the most concentrated part of where the sun is coming and so on.
We invested in it.
Yeah.
As the Technology Innovation Agency.
Yeah, and good.
To be where it is.
Yeah, but the thing is, what I was saying to, sorry, I almost said President Ramaphosa, what I was saying to President Ramaphosa is, invest now seriously, right? Get ahead of it. We could be exporters of this technology rather than being slaves, as we have been, for imports that always are coming from a small cluster of countries. And I did also, I must, for transparency's sake, did say that he should move quickly to legalize cannabis, because South African cannabis was one of the best quality in the world, and we could actually be, because it's being legalized left, right, and center now, we could actually, and by the way, of course, there are lots of health and other positive reasons, including hemp and rope and all of that. And he looked at me and he said, huh? And Ibrahim Patel said, yes, Mr. President, there's a lot of potential in this and we need to look at it. But they haven't really done that yet. And I want to quickly say about China. In October 2010, Louisa was with me in Beijing, and I had a meeting with the Vice Minister for Planning. And if you know about communist systems, the dudes with the biggest attitudes are the people in the Ministry of Planning. And this guy was the lead climate negotiator. And we go into the meeting with them, with my 5 Chinese colleagues. And at the end of it, my colleague said, what do you take away from the meeting? I said, well, I was impressed that these guys really understand the seriousness and how this could mess up China's entire economic development. And my colleague said, yeah, we know that. What else? And I couldn't read the subtext. And they said, you know what we took out of that meeting, my 5 Chinese colleagues? They said, our government has got it in their head, the way they will become the largest economy. This is in 2010. The way they will become the largest economy in the world is by dominating the green technology revolution as much. And look at them today. Electric vehicles, forget Tesla, right? Chinese vehicles are going to take over all over the world. They got trains that are faster than the Japanese, and the French trains, right? I can give you a whole list of things. Exactly, and they've got robots, right? On a scale that the Americans are not even near to, right? I have to say that at that time I didn't understand it, but now I can see what my Chinese colleagues were saying, and that was what I was trying to say to President Ramaphosa. I said, the longer we drag our feet, we're going to be putting ourselves at an economic disadvantage. So I just want to end on a lighter note about alternative energy sources. Yes. So I was asked by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation and the African Union and Nkosazana Zuma was then president of the African Union on the 50th anniversary of the OAU. And I was there in Louisa's getting very nervous because she knows what I'm about to say. I can see her rubbing her stomach too. So last minute I was asked to be the civil society voice and say something. But I was given like 5 minutes, right? So this is what I said, and I'll summarize it, right? So basically I said, listen, a few years ago, before I joined Greenpeace, I was invited as a visiting lecturer to Uppsala University in Sweden. And the day I arrived, right, an official from the foreign ministry, a senior guy who was a friend of mine, was going to come and take me out for dinner. And he arrived about half an hour late, which, in our culture is almost normal. But in their culture, he spent 45 minutes apologizing for being half an hour late. And the apology went something like this. He said, as my civic duty, I serve on the Uppsala Bus Management Company, right? And we had a big problem that we had to sort out. So I said, oh, what was the problem? So he said, yeah, in Uppsala, we run our buses on human feces. So I said, what you mean? He said, poo, shit, crap, whatever you call it. We treat it and we run it. And to be honest, I didn't know this was possible.
It is.
Right?
And cow dung.
So then, yeah, that's also feces, right? So, different kind of feces. So, by the way, cow dung was used by our people all over this country historically as an energy source, right? And so then I said, what's the problem? He said, well, in our municipality, we ran out of shit and we're trying to negotiate getting shit from the neighboring municipality, and they want to charge us so much for their shit as if their shit is like, something special.
It's a commodity now.
So I said, wow, you're fighting about shit. And I said, what was the solution? He said, no, we worked out a compromise and we're going to get their shit at a reduced cost. So now me, I'm still thinking this is all must be, and this is what I'm saying to the African Union, all the heads of state and all that. I'm telling this story. And then I said, the next day I go to the central bus station in Uppsala, and my concern was the smell. So I was walking behind the buses and I was going, no smell, no problem, everything running well. Yeah. Then I joined, 6 months later, I joined Greenpeace, and I hear that in Bristol, they have a bus called the Poo Bus, right? Same system. So I look at the leaders of the African Union and I say, I refuse to accept that European shit is better than African shit. We just have to get our shit together. Wait. We just have to get our shit together and turn the crisis of climate change into an opportunity. And that's what we need to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So in closing, this was the wildest, maddest session I personally have ever had. So thank you for that, but I'm not going to say thank you. I'm going to call Dr. Jenny du Preez to come and say thank you to everyone.
Okay, so I've been given gifts to give out, but now they're there. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay. Go. Thank you. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny du Preez, and I'm the Senior Manager Programs for the Chair for Critical Studies in Higher Education Transformation, and I've been asked to give the vote of thanks this evening. So I'd like to just start, of course, with Dr. Kumi Naidoo for giving the lecture tonight and for really, I think, provoking us to think differently about the climate crisis and the alternative measures we can take to combat it. So if you could come get a gift. And at this juncture, I think it would also be appropriate just to say thank you to Advocate Louisa Zondo and Mr. Ben Stevenson for joining us tonight and for sharing the song. Unfortunately, I don't have any gifts for you.
I'll share mine with them.
Okay, good. And then to Ms. Thandokazi Nkrumah Moyo, thank you so much for being a respondent. Okay, hang on. I've got too many notes here. And then, of course, to our facilitator, Tasneem Fredericks, thank you. I think it's worth mentioning that Tasneem has had a very long relationship with our university, and we really appreciate the friendship. Yes, okay, it's even she's even an alumnus, so we really appreciate all of that engagement. Thank you. Okay, and then also thank you to our those who are providing support. We've had a lot of support for this event, and the university has a lot of support within our communities. But particular thanks tonight must go to Mr. Michael Barry for sharing a message of support. Thank you. And of course to Ms. Rose de Donker as well from Patterson High School. Thank you so much. And then the last but not least of the gifts is for Masutu Madlovu and her accompanist. Yeah, I think that round of applause says it all. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It just gave this event such an emotional resonance, and we really appreciate it. Okay, so that's the end of the gifts, but I do still have a few more thanks to share. I think it's particularly important to share a special thanks to the South End Museum, to the trustees who are here tonight. and to all the staff behind the scenes who've made this possible, for opening this venue to us, both for tonight and on many other occasions. We really, really appreciate that. Sorry, I now have too many things. We're also really grateful to have other people in this audience who are supporting us. Mr. Sakele Ndabeni as the CEO of Green Spaces, Mr. Isaac Matembo as the chairperson of NAPDI, and Mr. Oryx Swartboy and his wife, Otila Swartboy, the director for the Institute for Children and Development Challenges. I hope that's correct. Okay, I'm so sorry. He will correct me later. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. And then to our Mandela University colleagues who are here tonight. There will be many here who I won't name, but just to mention Mr. Paul Geswind, the director of our alumnus office, and also a trustee of South End Museum. Thanks for being here tonight. We also really appreciate the support of our Dean of Science, Prof. Christa Grobler, and the Dean, Prof. Pamela Maseko, and the Deputy Dean, Jackie Luck, for being here. Thank you. I know also our comms and marketing team are here tonight to share the news, so thank you for that support as well. And to our EDHR, Nandi Sishuba, for being here tonight as well. And of course, to our two DVCs who are joining us tonight, Prof. Kiert, DVC of Engagement and Transformation. Oh, there's three? Oh, okay, sorry, three. This is like, I did not see him. Okay, my bad. Oh, yes. So yeah, our three DVCs who are here tonight, Prof. Andre Kiert, DVC of Engagement and Transformation, Prof. Azwandini Moronga, who's our DVC Research, Innovation and Internationalization, and Prof. Moki Moeng from the Learning and Teaching portfolio. Thank you so much for creating these spaces that we have to engage and for really guiding us in our journey as a university. And then, to some really last but very importantly, a list of people who really made this particular lecture come together and who support our institutional public lecture program. To Mr. Alan Zinn, thank you for your work as the institutional public lecture coordinator. I know we give him panic attacks every IPL, but it always comes together so well, so thank you so much. And of course, for this particular public lecture, to Prof. Beki Mngomezulu and his CANRAD team, thank you for all the work that has gone into this lecture. I know it's a lot, and we really appreciate the time, effort, and care that has gone into curating this space for us to engage. So thank you very, very much. And then, of course, just to extend our thanks to those networks that are often invisible but are always essential to our work. So everyone behind the scenes, administrators, caterers, transport, protection services, cleaning services, audio-visual, and photography. We know you're there doing a lot for us. And of course, all the others. Without this kind of support, we wouldn't be able to do this kind of work. And finally, of course, to everyone who is here supporting us tonight, who is engaging, who's listening, both in person, if anyone is online. This is our Mandela staff and students, any Emanco members I might have missed, educators and learners from Patterson High, especially thank you for joining us, and all community members from different organizations and areas of our city. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and remember that there are MUP books on sale at the back. Thank you.